What happens when you mix the story of TF2, put it in space, turn it into a 2D lane-based MOBA, and sprinkle a bit of spice onto it? Rather, actually just dump the entire spice factory right all over it. You get Awesomenauts, which I will declare now at the start of this video is probably one of, if not the most unique MOBA to have ever existed in the scene as far as I can tell as of this review. I mean, watch just a few seconds of this loading screen. I have no clue what the hell is going on, but I think we're in for a ride with this one. So howdy and welcome to Worst MOBA Ever, where I explore and review MOBAs that push the limits of both your computer and your sanity so you don't have to. Join me on the quest to uncover the absolute worst one, and if you enjoy MOBA related content, consider giving a thumbs up, subscribing for more, and slapping this bell for future updates. So getting into it, a little sad history on the game. As of last year, Awesomenauts Games, the mad lads behind this game, have filed for bankruptcy. As such, they have sold the rights to the game to none other than Atari. But what stands out to me as bizarre are the sheer number of positive reviews this game has, with over 26,000 Steam reviews that amount to a staggering 84% positive. Let's get into it. Starting the game, I met with a relic of the past, a feature lost to time, a settings launcher. These have become more rare through the years, but not gone. Steam games have a nice little feature that allowed devs to give players a choice of a default boot method at the start, which would bypass this launcher if the devs desired it. I would assume in the 10 years this game existed, they would have utilized this. Hopefully this isn't a bad sign. Once I'm in, I met with an establishing connection issue. It just won't join the game. Maybe the servers are down. I mean, the company filed for bankruptcy, it's possible. But they can't be down because they haven't unlisted the game on Steam, which is something developers can do. Also, they are still selling DLC to people. There's no way they would allow people to buy DLC in bundles if the game isn't playable. Well, surprise, it seems I have to downgrade to a beta version as the matchmaking is still active on that version. It seems like a sign of goodwill on the devs' part, so honestly that's pretty awesome of them, but I can't help but put some shame on the devs here. Their game is open to the public, but they're still selling content for the game. Atari now owns it, but has no one done their part in making sure people can't buy this? Doing a little skullduggery in the Steam discussions and Reddit shows that many people are confused about this, as they rightly should be. You are effectively selling air to some people. Also, technically, you're selling hope to people, because my logical assumption if you're selling these is that the game can come back. And I don't know if that's alright. Again, I'm wondering, where is this money going to if the company's bankrupt and you've sold the rights to Atari? Who is getting this money? Moving into the actual game, now that I have the beta patch installed, let's check out the introduction. Also, I want to stop and say that I looked it up in its current version, and I'll keep that in mind when critiquing certain parts. There will be inconsistencies, as it's hard to find all the changes specifically, especially there being a tutorial with a claptrap style mascot. I do however think it's fair to review this old tutorial, as at the time of this tutorial's existence, the game was already in decline, as well as it had 2 expansions to fix this tutorial. The game seems to be mostly the same game, so continuing out, we are railroaded into said tutorial. My absolute favorite thing for a game to do. We get a very flavorful cinematic, and we're birthed out of this pulsing robot hole. When we land, we take damage for some reason, but we get to heal from these little creatures by killing them. This is very morbid. It's also very bizarre, but it's just all the right amounts of morbid and bizarre that I love. The quarantine is apparently lifted, so we take off our masks after performing some pest control, and I'm able to use the shop. What I immediately see is that I have to buy my abilities. What the hell? It does appear though that the current version that isn't playable, the devs realized that this idea just made 0 sense, so you don't have to buy them anymore. You just start with your abilities. Also, the shop menu is fun, and so far, all the music in the game has been very fun. Again, this is just proof of how much care was put into the game, but on the flip side, in terms of having to buy the abilities in previous versions that were all the way up to over 3, that's a bad sign, because this game had been out for a long time. I then have to clear this little gold chain wearing pimp out of the mob spawner and free a teammate and a turret from mud. I assume all matches start this way as it's in the tutorial. Perhaps some kind of rust/mud mechanic where the player has to clean stuff. Weird, but we'll see. We then push the base and victory is established over our enemies. I assume this tutorial was to teach me everything I needed to know, and I'm ready to take on the world. As we get back to the oh my god, is that a baby in a mech suit playing their cute little mouse game complete with spinning hat on top? Yes, it is. See, I told you this game was a damn work of art. Moving on from the murdering baby mech, the next part of the tutorial has us go into a bot match. So let's see how that goes. It appears we can choose a map, and there's a lot of maps here, a total of 6. This is interesting, and I settled on picking Ribbit 4. Probably a Star Wars reference to Yavin 4, but who knows. We then get to choose our characters, and I get to see a very interesting system. You just unlock characters as you level. I personally think you should just have them all unlocked, but at least they're giving them away for free. Then I see the single worst idea I have ever seen in the history of MOBAs. Characters locked behind expansions. You're joking. I'm starting to see why this game might have fallen off. It might be a good game to play, but locking characters behind expansions, I could never imagine any larger companies doing that. Who in the dev meeting sat there with a big grin on their face, proud of the idea of locking characters behind actual expansions? I can only imagine the pitch and the proud strut they had walking away from the said meeting, thinking they just nailed it. I'm sorry, but you missed the mark big time here. This is a horrendous idea, and let me explain exactly what probably happened to the player base over the next few months and maybe even years because of it. Now, I could be wrong. The community can confirm this in the comment section for me, but I would venture to guess there was a small section of players that were genuinely angry at new characters costing money and basically called them broken and overpowered pay-to-win characters. But it looks like they sold well, so I guess it sucks to suck, as I always say. Just stop being poor and quit calling people pay-to-win, you poor peasants. Anyways, I decided to choose Ayla, and I notice each character seems to have their own theme. This is freaking awesome, and I'm beginning to see why the game is called Awesomenauts despite it failing. This game just continues to impress me with its artistic design and overall fun aesthetic. Let me go ahead and just show some of my favorites.
I am the brain of the operation.
Time.
One scoop of justice coming up!
Make some noise for the frog.
Continuing into the bot match, we are then birthed from Optimus Prime's prolapsed robot hole, and I am now collecting magical floating sugar cubes that are all presumably dripping from it. I hope it's sugar anyways. They do appear to be the money of the game, in fact. However, this feature seems to be one of the top no-nos in a competitive game, as it's effectively a skill barrier mechanic, which in layman's terms means it only benefits a small, dedicated percent of players that master it. It's not bad, but it's also just not good or needed for the game as far as I can tell. Seeing in the newest version of the game, it does appear to be a lot easier for the player to collect, and I am again just wondering, why even do this instead of just reducing the amount lost on death? Not to negate anyone's wonderful skill at being perfect at this, I just can't help but wonder, why? Same as has you had to buy abilities, a lot of unnecessary fluff for the game in these older versions. Upon landing, I proceed to the shop to buy my abilities and jump into the map. The map is split into 2 lanes and a middle lane jungle style area, similar to Twisted Treeline from League. Also, sorry for bringing up that old wound for those who miss it. My bad, homies. I then go to unclog the fancy robot hole and break free my towers, but it appears again, as in the tutorial, that was not an actual mechanic, just a bit of flavor. I figured as much, but I'm just being critical of a tutorial that I was forced to play. If I'm going to be forced to play a tutorial, then in my defense, can't I ask for the devs to make it for the sole purpose of genuinely preparing the players for the experience ahead? I of course haven't played the newest tutorial, so maybe they have or haven't figured it out. The day a MOBA tutorial just has bots spam ping me and call me slurs in chat is the day we'll see the first real actual tutorial. Also, you guys will start to see in this series, as I've stated many times before, tutorials in the MOBAs just suck. No dev seems to get it exactly right, but MOBAs are mostly complicated games in the dev's defense. So getting into the lanes, I'm treated with awesome 2D art throughout the whole map. the backgrounds, and everything moves. The entire map feels alive. I end up noticing a lot of mechanics though, similar to the sugar cubes when we were falling out of the pod, that weren't explained in the tutorial. We've got two-way platforms, a one-way barrier for blocking specific teams, foliage that hides you from the enemy view, the jungle creep that provides 20 cubes, health packs scattered throughout the map, and these launchers here to get us into the fray, as well as a teleport hotkey to get back to base. However, the newest tutorial seems to fix these issues as far as I could see to some degree. But after several years and like 3 versions deep and 2 expansions later, it was just way too late to do any of that. At the point, the only players you got are the OG ones. At this point, the tutorial isn't for anybody except for the occasional trickling in players. And that's not even to mention the shop system that seems to be account level gating purchases. It seems you need to be a certain account level to buy certain upgrades. This effectively gatekeeps new players from being on a level playing field as the old players. A few games do this to encourage players to unlock things, which is great in a PvE game, but not in a PvP game. Give us everything from the start. It's a competitive game. I shouldn't be forced to unlock stronger perks. It may encourage some people to push to unlock them, but other people will just get put off by this feature. I get a killing spree being the god gamer I am, and what's this? You get to hear the character's theme song as you get more kills. That is really cool. It's very catchy and makes this experience even more fun than it already was. I then get wrecked by this swagged out toad twice, but managed to learn his attack pattern and kill him on my 3rd try. It fully heals and rewards a nice little bonus of 20 cubes. It seems this game's gameplay loop is to effectively stay mobile and keep an active APM non-stop, constantly taking the small creeps, healing, trading damage, and forcing the enemy back to kill their towers. This is later confirmed in my first real match, as well as a few other things. After we break the base, I get to play against real players. Let's see how that turns out. It turns out horribly. I get wrecked by a team of what can only be described as 2 tanky brawlers and a single backline DPS. It was about as awful to play against as it sounded like. Granted, this was my first real match and I probably bought the wrong skills and I just wasn't playing the character properly. On top of that, I didn't expect a single noob to be playing this game in 2024 with something as complicated as switching to the beta branch to play it online. I knew the pain I was getting into playing this game with only 50 players. Since I am no quitter, I make an effort to play a single match with every character until I stop unlocking them immediately. So up next, I try Scoop, who has a cool Cloud Strife skin, except it's covered by text and a shopping cart. They are all covered by a text and shopping cart. Who was in charge of the UI and made the decision to cover the skin art with text and a picture? There's literally room down here for it. Why put it on top of the character? You wonder why you probably didn't sell so many skins back during this version. I'm not clicking to look at it on the Steam store. I'm about to start a match. I can only hope this was fixed in the future versions. 3 versions is way too long to look like this. Getting in, I decide to be a rebel and just upgrade my attack and get some weird shield defense perk, cause I'm quirky like that. This ends up being a horrible idea, and again it proves why you should just give players their abilities rather than making them buy them. I still don't understand why or when anybody would ever not just want their abilities. Just let us start with them and let us choose 1 or 2 upgrades at the start. And again, I think this just hints overall at the reason why the game over time didn't do as well. Things like this should have been changed on day 1, but they stayed until nearly 70% of the game's life. I'm wrecked in this match as well, and even worse so, it's by the character I tried last match, which is kind of embarrassing. This guy clearly knows how to play it pretty damn well. Anyways, moving on to my next match, I try good old Longstar, and I get put against the same team from my other match. I don't make the same mistake of just upgrading my abilities, but this time I instead get my dynamite in my bowl. I quickly learn about the sit in the bush and hold a lane meta. That seems to be the method of these players. You get close, you get wrecked. This isn't fun, but I am smart enough to not let it happen very often. I quickly realized that the upgrade path for most skills just seems to be simple. It's get as much damage as possible, as blowing up the enemy is really effective 9 times out of 10. There is occasionally a perk that stands out that offers such utility to the ability that you have to also get it as well. I end up getting my first win though this match, as halfway through the match we got our third teammate. It seems like you can drop into a match at any time. This is an interesting concept to me in terms of a MOBA. I'm not sure how I like it, but if it's keeping the game alive, I'm all for it. My next match I picked Not, and I realized that was a mistake, as this little thing has a somewhat complicated playstyle. The character has a lot of personality and a really catchy theme. Listen to it.
Time.
I'm in love with this character's voice. He reminds me a little bit of Flea from Mucha Lucha. Also, by the time I quickly figured out how to play him towards the end of the match, then we'd already lost, unfortunately, but he seems like a really cool character. One thing to note though, this was a different map with a completely different playstyle and interactive elements. It didn't even have a jungle. It's designed as awesome as the previous. I mean, look at the floor, it lights up. That's actually really cool. However, again, with the theme of a subpar tutorial, none of these things were ever explained at all. I just basically went in and started fighting. We got this capsule that spawns flying robots to push that are useless and basically just free money for the enemy. I don't know why why are they so weak? You just farm them for like 15 gold. As well as in the center, there's a massive firewall that consumes anyone foolish enough to get caught in it when the alarm goes off. That being said, I enjoyed all of this very much. So I'm really, again, I'm just like torn here because I'm seeing what makes this game so special for so many people. But again, it shows like how they didn't do anything to retain the players or teach them about these things. It's really quite literally trial by fire, as there's a giant flamethrower in the center of the map. Moving on again to my next match, it was with a little fella called Leon, and he has one of the wildest themes I've heard yet. The one I showed at the start. Check it out again. Also, this loading screen is just a bunch of fan art I noticed. That's a real nice touch, and again shows you how much this game was enjoyed by the community. So I learned that some purchases are just awful compared to others, or they cater to a playstyle that's so unique that the average player wouldn't really be able to utilize them as well. I noticed the enemy Leon's clone is suicide damaging the towers, which seems very useful for chipping the tower down, but I didn't get it. And why didn't I get it? Because the description just states, makes a replica dummy walk around. It does not state that it will send him out and he'll just run out and start attacking stuff. That's a horrible description. I instead, though, ended up getting Pinoy Nor, which gives me 500% regen, which sounds like a really good perk, but instead just ends up healing me around 20%. On a 10-second cooldown, that's not that great considering there's so many other ways to heal on the map. It'd be a lot better to just get something that amplified the damage, especially when you're restricted to only a few choices. A good example of this is Lone Star's bull upgrades. One of the better ones seems to be locked behind leveling up your account, and so is this slow apparently for alternate builds. Of course, I don't know the builds for Lone Star, but giving the bull 250 damage per second seems a lot better than having it spawn a little fart of a 300 HP health pack where it dies at, which won't even be close to you 90% of the time, making it even more useless. Which brings up another competitive no-no for MOBAs, or any competitive game really. So any developers watching, listen to what I've got to say here. Perks, upgrades, whatever you want to call them, in your game should always be a horizontal choice when forced to make a decision. None should be better than others by a huge margin. Abilities that are noob traps only serve to ruin a new player's experience and potentially turn them off the game if they're not the most clever player. Providing options for the player is a great thing, but not when it's to the new player's detriment, especially in a team competitive game where it's likely to get them flamed or ruin the entire team's chance of winning. On the subject of healing though, it's worth noting none of the stats are shown in a little like format next to your bar at the bottom or in the shop. If you want to see your regen, attack damage, or attack speed, you need to hover over your skills. At the very least, why isn't regen shown on the health bar instead of being put on the jump skill? This quite literally makes no sense. It wouldn't even have been difficult in the slightest to just put these variables on the bar here like this or something. And now that I think about it, I'm several matches in and I don't even know how our team gains levels or what gaining levels even means. I think we gain team EXP by stuff dying and players dying, but again, I as a new player can safely say that I have no idea. Is it something I should be invested in or not? This is something I should be able to know as a player, but I don't. This is probably fixed in the future tutorial, but that's too little too late. The character I try next is Raylan, and then I get to play the best match I've had the entire time in my time playing Awesomenauts. I get into a 3v3 from the start with real players. I'm excited for this. So far, the first time and probably the only time I'll get to play it this way. Also, no one seems to be wrecking me completely, and the match ends up being very even until the end. This is probably the most fun I've had, and it shows how cool Awesomenauts actually can be. This game has a lot going on for it. However, this quickly ruined the next match. I decided to try Ayla in a real match since the first time was a bot match. I get into a 1v3 unfortunately and get completely destroyed no matter how hard I try. This was fine and I understood that it is what it is. These things happen. However, what makes it the worst match I had was not only was it 1v3, but the enemy just kept spamming taunts the entire match. This guy. Also, I have no clue why the enemy can't swap teams to make it a solid 2v2, but I doubt they would have, as this guy was having a great time just spamming his taunt. At least he said GG at the end, but still, this guy. I then play what can only be described as a slideshow. I hilariously got into a 1v1 with someone hosting from China. We both lag and proceed to kill each other in the weirdest, glitchiest ways. This is exactly why in 2023, it's insane to me that in 10 years, they never made dedicated servers for this amazing game. This ended up being my last match, and I'll let it play out for you guys in the background while I give my final thoughts on this game. Awesomenauts is probably one of the quirkiest, most well-designed MOBAs that I've seen in literally years, and I wish I could have gotten into it while it was still an active game. Apparently the console player base is still somewhat active, so you can at least get a few matches if you're watching this video and you play it on console. The actual gameplay, however, despite a mild learning curve, was really good. It's really good. Combat felt great, and I only felt cheaped out by a few heroes, namely that damn baby Gundam which kept knocking me and my team into the towers. Damn you, you cute little bastard. So on that note, I give Awesomenauts a Gundam Baby Mech out of 10. So go check it out. It's definitely a must play. And if you're new to this series, I got a surprise for you. Every MOBA I review, I try my best to get a final review in as the game was meant to be played, or as close to it anyways. So on March 16th, 12 p.m. PST, if you play Awesomenauts or want to try it out, let's all download the game and try it for the whole day or as long as we can keep the queues going. And on that final note, I say thank you for watching and have a wonderful day.